Well, he's been away for some time now, but alas, they say, this weekend may just put an end to all of that speculations, all of the talk, and possibly pick up from where it left off. The governor of Taraba State has said that he will return this weekend. That's what we're focusing on, some of the sundry matters concerning that one. Achike Chude joins us today. He's a public affairs analyst and an activist too. Thank you for coming on this one.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain.
I had to slip that in. How did the protest go eventually? Any response from anywhere?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that I think the most important thing is that Nigerians have tuned into it, and they're not just taking sides, but essentially, hoping that the government will do the right thing, so that education will be given its not priority in this country. We want to move Nigeria forward, and we believe that we have a great country.
But on the part of those who are supposed to act, do you think that this will move them to action, or any shadow of doubt that something will happen?
No, I think much more concerted effort is needed. And unfortunately, that is the nature of our political leaders. You need to give them a little bit of a shove, from time to time, to make them remember that the people are there and that the people are not going to blink. I think if when a government begins to fear the people, then the possibility of creating a better political environment for all is higher. Not when the people fear the government. For now, that is the situation in this country. So we are trying to take Nigerians to that level where they can now begin to make very serious, demands on government, and insist that these demands, have to be met for the good of all.
Do you think the people of Taraba State gave the government a shove when the governor was away all this while?
No, unfortunately, see, the issue of Taraba, somebody said that when a matter, and I've often repeated this refrain, when a matter is not properly solved, it will never go away. And so what we are seeing is what we have seen before. And what we have learned in this country, is that, one lesson they say man learns from history is that he never learns any lesson at all.
What have we seen before, and what didn't we learn from what we saw before?
4 years ago, I did a story, I think an article on the back page of the National Daily Independent newspaper. It was written, Turai and the Conspirators of Aso Rock. And that had to do on the happenings in the country at the time that the late president was very, very ill. And all kinds of intrigues were surrounding his continued stay abroad. And in that article, I had called then for the arrest of the then, First Lady, Turai, and then Olusegun Adeniyi and other principal actors, who were involved in the mismanagement of that particular crisis, almost pitting Nigeria into very serious crisis, that would have found difficult to recover from. So that was what we saw, and one had the impression that an entire country had been captured, seized and captured by a few people who do not have any legal basis for directing the affairs of state. And that is the key thing, that is critical. Whether it is the First Lady, whether it is the media officers of a president or a governor, and so on. The issue is that there is no legal basis, no legal connection that they have, no constitutional, statutory right, that connects them to a government, that puts them in a position where they have to give instruction about the running and management of the affairs of a state. You understand? Once that happens, then what you have is, is the realization that it would appear that an entire system, an entire state, talking about state structure or the federal government structure, has been captured by a few people and are now directing the institutions of governance to move in a particular process other than it is meant to move. So this is the issue, and that was what happened about 4 years ago, and that was not resolved right. All the intrigues that went with it, part of it because the people who were involved in various acts, of subversion against the Nigerian state, none of them was ever called to book. None of them was ever called to, give account for the ignominious roles, and that they had played during that crisis that threw Nigeria into, a very serious, problem. And as a result of that, again, we talk about the culture of impunity, not just in the areas of corruption. This is also corruption, really, because it's also abuse, a serious abuse of powers.
Which one?
What is happening in Taraba State?
How is that?
Because, there are constitutional provisions, really, on what would happen when such a situation emerges. I agree that there is still a lacuna in the Constitution, which we hope that the present people who are trying to address some of these things would address and make it very, very clear, very explicit, that when you are confronted with this kind of situation, it is not the constitutional provisions concerning it are not subjected to all kinds of interpretation or misinterpretation.
What should they have done? What do you think they should have done?
Well, I think it was unfortunate that the governor had an accident. Unfortunate that he was injured in that, accident and so on. But again, the reason why, the Constitution, though people contest that, we the people, Constitution says we the people, tells you clearly that, somebody has said that wars, I think it was the former French president, said that wars are too important to be left in the hands of generals. And looking at the way politics is played in Nigeria, I would also say, and I think I've said that several times, that politics is too important to be left in the hands of politicians, especially the kind of Nigerian politicians we have in this country. So it means a greater involvement and participation by the people in how their affairs are run, especially when we have come to the realization that for all of 50 years we have given the political class the opportunity to make good for this country, and they have failed. So that clearly tells the people that we must get, involved much more seriously in the affairs, of government. For the issue of Taraba State, it's really, unfortunate. But again, like I keep on saying, it's not about, it's about a few people who are in power, who have availed themselves with all the trappings of power in a most, even though we're in a democracy, but in a most undemocratic manner. And they do that through subterfuge, intrigue, outright manipulation of the system, corruption, intimidation, sometimes outright threat against political opponents and so on. Yeah, and at the end of the day, the whole state lies comatose.
With respect to this particular case, how do we ensure that what you describe is the case, especially if the people don't think otherwise? Remember, they were put there by the people, and if they're doing something contrary to what the people want, they would have spoken up. But if they didn't,
what is the issue is what is the expectation of the people? Yeah, we can say
governance.
Yes,
good governance.
Good. Blame the complacency and the docility of the people. Blame the ignorance of the people. Blame the illiteracy of the people and so on. All of these things have a role to play. Come to
what
the
about
fore when you're talking about effective administration of a people. To a large extent, and maybe what you are trying to adduce is that, as people say, silence is acceptance. But it is not really so from that perspective. The issue is that our people have been so much marginalized and so much pauperized that a man is only loyal to the man that puts bread on his table. And these are some of the realities that we face today. So they have surrendered their mandate, to a few people who have taken it upon themselves to determine the direction of their state. That is not the way it should be. I understand. But when you have a citizenry that is
enlightened, these people were elected, weren't they?
No, they were elected. You understand? Yeah. But what I'm saying is this. Again, you cannot remove the political maturity of a people from the politics that eventually, the kind of politics that eventually is played out in the country.
There seems to be a precedence about this one. Remember, how do we factor in, first of all, take a look at, it happened in Enugu. Yeah. The governor was away for a while, health grounds. He's back to the state, and things are moving on. Then you have this one, reported that he will be back this weekend. Yeah. And so if he comes back, it is expected that he'll pick up from where perhaps his deputy has left off. Yeah. So are you suggesting that these two chaps, or okay, the first chap, then this one now, should not have been allowed to play out the way it did and the way it's about to?
No, well, the issue is that we also have another instance too, I think, in Cross River State, where the governor was absent for a very, very long time. Now, that was not, I can tell you that was not anticipated by the constitution of this country. That also tells you that, like people have said, there's a serious anomaly in the laws, of Nigeria. Because if that had been anticipated, I think, those who wrote this constitution would have been much more rigorous, would have been much more foresighted in terms of what, making sure that some of these, issues, are avoided. But again, that is the essence of a democracy. When some things begin to go wrong, that there are things to